Hello everyone and welcome to Business Disability Forum's weekly COVID-19 webinar, which we're offering as a free resource for everyone during these uncertain times, as my 10-year-old son likes to call it. I'm Lucy Ruck, I'm the Taskforce Manager at Business Disability Forum, and I'm delighted to be your host again for today. We'll be asking for your questions as we go through this. We've got some fantastic panelists with us today, so please do ask away in the Q&A any questions you might have for them. We do have closed captions available for you today, provided by MyClearText, and you can choose these by clicking on the closed captions button at the bottom of the screen, which is next to the chat option. You can adjust the size if you click on the arrow next to the stop start video and choose video settings, and you can click on accessibility. If you've got any queries, please put these in the chat function and my colleagues will be available to help you during our webinar today. So our subject today is about supporting deaf colleagues, and although this isn't really a new issue, the channels and the way we are interacting have obviously changed for everyone, but more so for our deaf colleagues. For others, this is a whole new experience, or it could be the first time they've actually thought about the impact for them. So I'm delighted today to be joined by two guests who have enormous experience in this field. We have Joanna Wootten, Age, Disability and Inclusion Expert, and we have Orla, Pearson, Director at MyClearText. I also have my colleague Davina on the line as well, who's providing a bit of backup in case any connections go down, the joy of home working. And she'll also be helping out with your questions later on in the session. So hello Orla, hello Joanna, nice to have you with us.
Hello.
Can you tell us a little bit about your experience and maybe why this particular topic is so important to you? Joanna, can I come to you on that one first?
Hi, I'm Joanna Wootten, and as Lucy said, I work with the organisation to help them get it right for older and disabled customers. But the reason I've been asked to do this today, well, first of all, I'm deaf, so I kind of know what I'm talking about. I've got a lot of deaf and hard of hearing friends, and I'm also sign language interaction captioning, and I've used communication support myself for many years. And it's been interesting for me to see the transition from being in the workplace to working remotely and how we've all been managing to adjust to the new normal.
Thank you, Joanna. Orla, can you tell us a bit about your background?
Yes, I'm Orla Pearson, and together with Elaine McCarthy, we run MyClearText. We provide live subtitling for individuals in the workplace, but we also provide live captioning to companies. We also provide a lot of advice, particularly at the moment as companies are working remotely and individuals are working remotely. So we've been spending a lot of time working with companies to make their platforms accessible, finding solutions to doing that, workarounds, improvising. But yes, that's something we really specialise in.
And of course, well, not you personally, but Elaine is here providing captions for us today on this Zoom webinar.
Both of us.
Yeah. Which always reminds me I must not talk quite so quickly. Okay, I'd like to come to you on what some of the challenges have been. And again, it's been a changing environment. So I guess those challenges that deaf colleagues might have faced in the past are slightly different to now. What have been those challenges for people?
Do you want me to answer, Orla?
Yeah,
you go.
Yeah,
okay,
go Joanna.
Well, quite a good example is now, actually, when I'm looking at you, Lucy, there is a slight disconnect between your visual information and the audio, which can happen in the workplace. So there are going to be people who manage just fine in the workplace, might be struggling with doing things remotely. I think it's really important to make the point that not every deaf person is the same. Not every meeting is the same. So we will have people using communication support for every meeting, such as sign language interpreters. What you need to put in place for that will be different for maybe people using captions. And you've got two types of captioning. You've got captions being provided by a human being now, You've also got captions, which are auto captions, which are available on some platforms. I'll talk a bit more about the pitfalls of that as well as the benefits. But also you've got people who might not use communication support at all, and were finding in the workplace, but finding it a bit more difficult now because they need to have good quality audio and visual information. Meetings need to be run properly and well, and we'll talk a bit more about that later.
Joanna, if I can come to you on another thing, I know that you're an excellent lip reader. How well is that to use over things like Zoom or video conferencing? Is that more challenging for you?
Okay, it depends a little bit on what the situation is. And it also depends sometimes if the platform's working well or not. You know, sometimes it works seamlessly and it's marvellous. And it works particularly well for one-on-one meetings. So if I'm talking to somebody, one or two people, I don't necessarily need communication support in those situations. But that's also because of the power balance that I'm able to interact, I'm able to ask people to clarify. That's really different from when you have a large town hall meeting, maybe, or if somebody's doing a formal presentation, when you can't really interact and go, what was that, what was that? And that might be when I would need, and a lot of people would need, formal communication support in some way, because you do get disconnect as well happening between the audio and the visual information as well. And the other thing is about fatigue. It's all very well trying to repair the message. If I'm talking to somebody for 15 minutes, going, yeah, I can work out what's going on. It's another thing to do, rather, to do it for 8 hours a day. So I think we also need to think about that.
Mm. Thank you, Joanna.
I think as well something that's, there's a lot more going on the screen as well. So, and I think people sometimes referring to documents, and people are trying to lip read them, or they're trying to access captions, and people are moving from document to slides, and I think that can be really difficult for people. I've seen that cause quite a few problems for people.
So just to add to that, at the moment what I'm doing is, although we've got automatic, we've got captions being provided by Elaine, thank you Elaine, and obviously the quality is good, there's a slight time lag. So potentially in a normal situation, I've actually got on the screen as well, the captions in a different platform. Can you see? The benefit of that is I can get to the larger block and you can adjust the captioning a bit more accurately here. But I've got those on a second screen, but I can't really fit them onto my Zoom screen. So I'm having to look across at a second screen. Then I've got on my third thing, the WhatsApp. So I've just got quite a lot of different information going on. Plus I need to digest documents. So it's just worth bearing in mind that for deaf colleagues, they may having to be processed more. And the other thing is I have to look permanently at the screen. What I'm not able to do, unlike hearing people, is look away.
Yeah.
You know, you're able to play about with your eyes a bit more, and I need to focus on digesting and getting information. So that's an issue there. It's more difficult for people using sign language interpreters as well, because if you think about it, it's a 3D language, it's not 2D, and so there's quite a big difference in cognitive load. What some people are doing, for example, maybe the meeting is in Microsoft Teams, but the difficulty with that sometimes is trying to be able to see the interpreters plus the PowerPoint, because you have less ability to manipulate. So what often will happen, you might be in the meeting on Microsoft Teams, you will have a separate screen with your interpreters there, so you can see them in Zoom, because you're able to manipulate the picture. But you've got to then make sure, and the employer needs to facilitate this, that the sign language interpreters or speech to text reporters are invited in the Microsoft team meeting so they can access the audio, they need to be invited to a team member so they can see the PowerPoint presentation and hear everything that's going on.
Mm. And actually, we've had a comment in our chat menu as well, saying that with bandwidth issues and when things are running a bit more slowly and that time lapse, you know, when things aren't syncing up as neatly, that's a real challenge for lip readers as well. And I'm sure, Joanna, you'd probably agree with that.
I definitely agree with that.
Good.
It is a real problem about the quality of the picture and sound varying and time lag and so on.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And again, Joanna, I'm going to come to you on this one. What are the benefits if we get this right? How does that really stand out when people get it right, or is that becoming more common that people are, I mean, I'm sure you would tell them, I know you would, Joanna, but how does that make a difference to you when it's right?
It is more relaxing and I'm more able to both get involved and participate instead of stressing about it. And instead of my bandwidth being focused on logistics, I'm actually at a meeting, which is quite nice. And it also, I mean, it's interesting, Lucy, you said, I'm sure you would tell them, but that putting the pressure on me. Why should I be pressurised into telling everybody whether I'm able to access things? And I think line managers and meeting organisers should be keeping an eye on things, quite frankly. They should be showing up, watching the captions themselves to see if everything is working okay. They should be checking in with their colleagues after meetings, allowing that line of communication to be open and just saying, how was it for you? Is there anything we can change? Is there anything we can fine tune, do a bit differently? The owner should not be put on the deaf person to always be the difficult one, and also to feel they always have to keep raising issues in relation to accessibility instead of just talking about the topic, whether it's the weather or the accounts.
Yeah, absolutely, Joanna. No, you're absolutely right with that. So I think people joining us today for this webinar need to maybe think differently when putting solutions in place for deaf colleagues. What solutions are there? What cost implications are there? And who could help with this? Orla, maybe I should come to you on that one.
Well, yes. I mean, there's lots of people who can help, but I actually think a lot of the solutions don't have to be paid solutions. So good meeting management is a huge, huge help for anyone. And that's not just talking about deaf and hard of hearing people, it's for everybody. I think whoever's chairing the meeting, there needs to be a specific agenda and people need to stick to it. I think that documents should be circulated beforehand so that the subject matter and things that people are referring to, you can familiarise yourself before you get to the meeting, and then you know what's being referred to, and then you can concentrate maybe on the captions or everything else without having to go to that document. I think that lighting is a huge issue. I attended a webinar the other day and there was a man sitting in darkness, and I said to him, nobody can lip read you, and he was like, oh, we're decorating. So we had a conversation about making himself lit and why that was important. But I think, you know, sometimes people are talking here or they're talking here because of their stuff like that's just really simple. Make sure you're facing forward always, you're not looking away, you're taking your time. And I think what Joanna said was really interesting, always checking. It shouldn't be up to the deaf person in the meeting to keep saying, can you repeat that? Can you repeat that? Because that's putting a lot of attention on them, and not everybody has the confidence to do that. You might be new in your role, you might be junior in your role, and to keep interrupting in order for you to get the information you need, it's not fair. And simple things can mean that you don't have to do that. And I think keep checking for understanding. That's really important. But yes, there are paid solutions. A BSL interpreter or live human captioning is also really useful. And I mean, it does if you're having live human captioners, it does give you a smooth flow of text with punctuation, grammar, speaker changes, all of those things which can help you to relax and just be part of the meeting. You don't have to interrupt, you don't have to keep checking. We will add in asides. If there's any extra information, that's all human captioners will put those in, as will BSL interpreters. But yeah, I think there's a long list of things people can do that are not paid before you get to a paid solution to enable people to access meetings.
And Orla, one thing I was going to ask you around with the kind of the AI captioning versus the human captioning is, I know one thing that we've spoken about before is the importance sometimes of getting the joke in the room. Could you just share that with us?
Yeah, so as a human captioner myself, and you know, someone who has a team of human captioners, really important to get the flavour of what's going on in a meeting. So if everybody's laughing and joking, then make sure that we put the punctuation in to make sure that it's obvious it's a joke, or if there's an aside comment, we'll put that in brackets. And just that kind of thing. There's nothing worse than sitting in a room while everyone else is laughing, you haven't been able to access that joke. I mean, AI captions is something we test a lot. I think the quality is very varied, and if I'm really honest, I think it's oversold. I've had teams captioning on for some virtual events we've been doing, and I've been writing alongside it, and it's not consistent. I think that's the problem. You might have one speaker is perfect, and then other people start talking, and it sends you down rabbit holes. It can end up not making sense for maybe 4 or 5 sentences. And that takes you out of the conversation. You are now trying to catch up, trying to put things together. I think it's an awful lot of hard work if people are expecting people to rely on that as communication support in the meeting. I think, again, you're asking the deaf person to be a detective, to put together these things, to make sense of these captions. And you know, I've seen people go down rabbit holes and it takes 10 minutes to sort out because they've gotten the wrong end of the stick. So it requires, I think people don't understand, it requires an incredibly high level of accuracy in order for someone to feel part of a meeting and to feel they're really understanding what's going on. And AI captions are not at that level. And I always find hearing people extol the virtues of AI captioning. And I always say to them, take your headphones off, sit and watch it without sound, and ask yourself, are you getting all the information you need to access the content?
Thank you. Joanna, would you like to come in on that?
I think I would agree that AI captioning is not as good. I think, again, it depends on the situation you're in. I was using it last night for an evening class, and it is more stressful. What you get also is that people are looking at the camera as well. So I see a nose, and I think repeating a nose is quite difficult. But what was very helpful was that I had the PowerPoint slides in advance, and that helped me process things when the AI subtitles weren't very good. So I would say to that, the more information you give, the more you will reduce the cognitive load. And the other thing, it helps when the picture freezes as well, because I have got some residual hearing. It helps me to straddle the gap. So if you can give PowerPoint slides, but also I think it's really only useful in a very controlled situation, or when you've got a small meeting with 1 or 2 people, when it's much easier to explain or interact and say, hold on a minute, what was that? I think AI captioning doesn't really work for a large meeting with a lot of people talking, because you've just got increased chance of people not speaking clearly, mumbling, or picture freezing and so on. And you just got a lot more rabbit holes to go down, and it just really adds to the cognitive load and stress, because what you end up getting, you will get the gist, and sometimes that's good enough. You just need to gist, but other times you really do need everything. I think for me, I find the benefit with having a human captioner is that I can switch off a bit more, and I'm a bit more able to be present at the meeting. I'm not spending so much energy on trying to work out what was happening. And I wonder if that was a joke because everybody was laughing. Who knows? It was probably a rubbish joke. But nonetheless, in lockdown, you need everything you can get.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, I want to come back to the business of breaks as well. We haven't talked about that. Because it is harder work. I'm sort of having to work my poor little brain harder. I think it is helpful to have breaks in between meetings whenever possible. And I would urge line managers to think about this when they're working with their colleagues, to see if it's possible, for example, to start the meeting at 15:15 instead of on the hour, so you get that 15-minute break. In case it overrun, you still then get 10-minute break, and so on. The other thing is that sign language interpreters, particularly, and deaf people using sign language, have talked a lot about the fatigue issue, and it's very helpful if there can be breaks for that reason. An interpreter who might have been able to work on their own for 45 minutes in the old workplace. Do you remember those days when we used to hang out together? I know, so unhygienic. But those days, but now we may need a break after 30 minutes or something. So just be aware that there is this other stuff happening, and do please check in with people on that.
Yeah, we've had a number of meetings, Joanna, with people just going, I won't be long, and there is real impact on everybody when people run over on meetings, and I think you lose your audience as well, if I'm honest. But yeah, I think it's important to stick to your agendas and stick to your times, because of the fatigue that people are having, everybody's having, from staring at screens all day and trying to gather information, and more so if you're deaf and hard of hearing, because you're having to work 3 or 4 times harder than everybody else.
Absolutely. And what other options are available in terms of, we've talked about captioning a little bit. What about BSL? How can that work well remotely for people, and what options are available?
Well, you've got various options. You can use, there are dedicated providers like Sign Video who are providing interpreters. They've been working remotely for donkey's years, so they do know this space. Also, a lot of deaf people are using their old Access to Work support and just transferring it to using it remotely. That, again, but he's about people transferring it. Access to Work are open to this. What is worth noting is that there is a useful website that talks about access to work and deaf people. What I will do is share the website with Lucy and Business Disability Forum afterwards, so that all delegates can go to look for information if anybody is having issues. But on the whole, I'm hearing positive news that people are having their grants increase if they need more, because some people may have been managing okay in the workplace, but are struggling with doing it remotely. So it's fine to start a new application too. So if you were fine before and are finding things difficult now, go and make an application. You're not going to be commuting any time soon, so you can use the time to hang out with Access to Work.
Absolutely. And of course, if people that don't know, in the UK, Access to Work is a government funded scheme where you can apply for support if you have a disability or long-term health condition to help overcome any barriers you might be facing. So please do utilise that scheme. It's often talked about as one of the best kept secrets, I think. But as I say, support is available through that. So please do take advantage. And it might be that the situation you hadn't realised how much your hearing might have deteriorated maybe, and now you're working remotely, that's become more of an issue. So as you say, Joanna, putting in a new application because the circumstances and your need have changed is absolutely valid, isn't it? Orla, I think you were going to say something on that.
Sorry, just to say, also, can I just come in on that? With Access to Work, it's also that people can apply for technical equipment as well. I know we've been talking about communication support, but people might benefit from a high-spec set of headphones, which will make it easier for them to follow online meetings. So think widely about this and do some research, and good luck. Sorry, Orla, I interrupted.
No, it's fine. I was just going to say, if you are going to use communication support, it's really important for line managers to open up the meeting early, so 15 minutes early, to allow everybody to spotlight the interpreter, for interpreters to maybe practice a changeover if there's more than one interpreter, or the captioner to then send the setup for sending captions to Zoom or whatever is happening, just to give everybody that time to be ready and settled before then the meeting started. So if you're a line manager, do try and give some extra time for everybody to get settled rather than arriving 1 minute before the meeting and then starting. So, and another thing I was going to say, just in terms of meeting management, something I've noticed is there's always a bit of chat before a meeting, and then all of a sudden it's quickly into the meeting. And I think if you have deaf or hard of hearing colleagues attending, it's really important to make it clear when you're moving from one stage of the meeting to the next. And that's just a very small thing to do, to be able to say, right, we're now going to stop the chat and we're now moving into the formal part of the meeting. Because if you're lip reading, people can change very fast, and it can take you 5 minutes to realise that you're now in a formal meeting. And I've seen that happen a lot, and I think that's quite important, because it gives people a sense that the meeting's starting and they can then try and keep up with the topic that's in hand. I mean, there's just so many things we could talk about with meeting management generally, but yeah.
I think I was going to agree with Orla. It is helpful to indicate the rhythm of the meeting when it's moving from being informal to formal. I also recognise that we're living in agile times. They may not always be possible to stick to the agenda, but if that's the case, signal it and manage it. So it's just saying something has cropped up. We are now going to be talking about X and explaining that. So just putting things in context really helps, and it really helps people who are not necessarily using communication support, but just going, right, okay, this is the new subject matter, because a lot of people don't hear perfectly, and as everybody gets older, you don't hear as well. So I think it's about good meeting discipline. And I think it's about making it clear to everybody that you want the meetings to work well for everyone. So it becomes an all-inclusive thing, not just going, ooh, it's all about X. You know, it's just really annoying. And if I could slap people virtually, I would.
We need like an emoji for that, don't we? Anyway, not going there. And I think sound quality, as you said, Joanna, you do have some hearing, so making sure people have good audio and visual, I think, is probably quite important. And muting microphones as well, I think, which people are getting better at, I think, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah, it's unmuting microphones as well as a big issue. So people will start in, and then people say you're muted, and then they'll go so fast because they've already said something. So I think people need to really think about having shorter agendas. I think people need to just slow down, because if you slow down, you generally can go fast. And I think slowing down helps everybody, and I think it particularly helps colleagues who have some accessibility needs. And when I sit down sometimes to cover meetings and I see a massive agenda and we've got 1 hour, I mean, it makes my heart sink, and it must be more so if you're trying to access a meeting, for sure. And I think that indication of we're moving on to point 3 now. Is everybody with me on point 3? Things like that. That helps everybody. It really does. It just, and we're finishing the meeting now. The formal part of the meeting is over. If you want to leave, you can. If you want to stay and chat, that's fine. Those kinds of things are really invaluable, I think.
Yes, I think we all agree, Orla. And I think I agree that we are beginning to adjust to the new normal, so to speak. But I also think that perhaps we're becoming a bit sloppy as well. that maybe when there was this initial adjustment to working remotely, it was like we're all mucking in together, so anything goes. But I think now we can ask people to mute and unmute microphones and have a little bit, and ask for people perhaps to reflect on how meetings are going, are we trying to do too much in a particular period of time? Do we need, instead of one long meeting, have several short meetings because it's easier to digest sometimes? I think in the old days, we used to have meetings for 3 hours, but there would be naturally built-in breaks and people would get up to go to the loo or something. And I think maybe just going different agenda items are new meetings, perhaps a little bit more now, instead of just going continuously for a long period of time. Because then it gives everybody a screen break, which is good health and safety practice anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also wondering, Joanna, we've talked about visuals are obviously very important for you, so you can see people's faces. What about when people don't like putting their cameras on, or lighting's not very good? What's that like?
I think it's not so, but I understand why people might not want to put their cameras on. I happen to need it for access reasons. I think if people are not comfortable doing it, then the workplace needs to make that clear in advance of a meeting. If the meeting is going to say it's optional, whether people can have their camera on or off, I need to know before the meeting so I can arrange for professional communication support, because I know that I won't be able to see people talking, because I think we have to recognise there will be different people with different needs. For some people, they will have a legitimate reason for not wanting the camera on, and I don't think my needs override other people, but it's helpful for me to know in advance so I can make sure I've got captioning or a sign language interpreter in place so that I'm able to participate without making people feel uncomfortable on the spot.
Yeah, it's a bit of a challenging one, isn't it? Or it might just be someone hasn't done their hair, or the background's a bit messy and therefore don't want to share. So it's a need versus a nice to have, I think. So Orla, you were going to...
I was going to say, I think a lot of this is pointing to the person who's chairing the meeting, just setting out the terms of the meeting, asking people, are you going to be able to, is everybody turning their cameras on? If not, can you let me know? Has anybody got access needs? I think it is just, I think in these times of virtual working, those who are chairing meetings need to take more responsibility to make sure that everybody is comfortable and able to access the information and is able to really be able to chair properly. You know, when you have a strong chair, a meeting always runs to time. When you have a strong chair, you have a meeting that covers everything that's covered. Everybody comes out feeling good. If you don't have a strong chair, it really impacts on everybody. So I think if you're someone who is watching and who's chairing meetings, this is something just to check beforehand now that in the new virtual world, it's not good enough to ask when you get into a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting, everyone all right? Great, let's go. It's easier when you see people face to face. You know, Joanna might be able to say, I need this before the meeting. It's different. It's completely different online. It's a different atmosphere. It's a different way of working.
Thank you.
And we really have to take hold of that and listen beforehand. And I think chairs really have to do that.
Yeah, and so the chair really needs to be proactive rather than reactive, really, but it's about the planning in advance, isn't it? Yeah. So benefits of captions, they're not just for deaf people, I believe. Other people may occasionally benefit from them as well. Orla, could you fill us in on who else might like to use captions occasionally?
We have feedback from so many different people in terms of who uses captions. So if we're at an event that's a public event, we usually invariably have a lot of older people that come up and say, I found that really useful. I found there was a lot of background noise and they were fantastic. We have an awful lot of people who use English as a second language who use captions all the time. They're probably one of the biggest users of subtitling on television, subtitling everywhere. And we also have a lot of people with many neurodiverse conditions who come and give feedback to us. We had someone respond to some live streaming subtitles we were doing saying, I have auditory processing disorder and it's the first time I've ever been able to access online content, which is always fantastic to hear. So I think it's becoming much more normal to have captioning. And I found a real increase in people, say, who we weren't working with before in the olden times, as Joanna has referred to them, are now contacting us. And, you know, we've had contact with them in the past and they're like, oh, it's not on our agenda. Whereas now they're really, really wanting to put live subtitling or post-production subtitlings onto their content because they understand they get a bigger audience if they do. My children are teenagers and they use captions all the time, live subtitling all the time. It's on in our house, and it's not just because of me. So yeah, I think bigger companies now, as they go virtual with their town halls, it's really important for them to have subtitling, live subtitling on those, and that's something we help people with all the time. So yes, I think it's definitely not just deaf and hard of hearing people, but that is our, as a company, that's our first reason for asking people to put live subtitles on things.
And I think that there's the issue of cognitive load as well, because we're accessing things remotely. Having captions help an awful lot of people to understand what's going on a bit more easily. So if you've got town halls, you've got, I don't know, people dialing in across the globe, not everybody's going to have good internet connection. Yeah. You know, the audio getting cut out at a critical point, it just gives 2 bits of information so people can go, well, I know what's going on. Plus, of course, a lot of people are neurodiverse, will have English as a second language, etc. And I think people have got more used to having subtitles or captions because they've been watching iPlayer when they were commuting in the olden days, etc. So I think it has become normalised that people just like having 2 sources of information. I think it's best practice for every company to do it for any large meeting that they do, because so many people will benefit and just find it easier to understand what's going on. And if you are going to all the effort at communicating with your employees, why not make sure they know what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've had some questions in. Davina, can I come to you for those questions, please?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some good questions coming through. I think you might have touched on this already, but somebody's asked a question about Microsoft Teams and whether it's possible to pin a person on Microsoft Teams. So can you pin your BSL interpreter on the screen? Yeah. So I guess that leads on to another question.
Hang on, wait, sorry. You say yes, but the problem is I can either see the pinned person or the PowerPoint presentation. I can't see them both simultaneously.
Yeah.
So you don't have the flexibility that you get with Zoom, where you can move things, so you can pin people and see the PowerPoint and change the sizes. So yes, I can pin the interpreter, but annoyingly, it means that I can't really see the PowerPoint. And if it's a critical part, which is another reason, if you can send through your PowerPoint presentation in advance, at least if I read it in advance, it won't matter as much.
I think that's a good point, Joanna. I guess that leads on to another question around how have you found, how responsive have some of the companies been in how they've made changes to their online platforms? So I hear some things about Zoom being a little bit better in terms of them adding, I think they added a wave icon possibly onto their platform. So what are your thoughts on how companies are responding to some of these requirements to make their platforms more accessible?
Orla, do you want to respond first?
Yeah, I do actually. I mean, to be fair, very few of these platforms are accessible if you want to bring in a BSL interpreter or a speech-to-text, a human captioner. And the only platform that is allows you to do this is Zoom. So Zoom is the only, if you turn on the captions here, you can see that there is live subtitles integrated into the platform, and we're sending that from our software straight into Zoom. And that's the only other platform you can do that is YouTube. So that's 2 platforms. All of the platforms are relying on automatic captioning. We have spoken to them, we have made the case to them, but they say that their automatic captions is accessibility. And obviously we would disagree for a number of reasons that we've discussed. So we have to come up with quite innovative ways around this. And we do have a number of ways around this, that we have our own overlaying subtitles that we can put into these platforms. But I don't think they seem to be quite set on the fact that their automatic captions provide accessibility, and we would disagree with that. And a lot of our clients would disagree with that too. All of the bigger companies that we work with are wanting live human captioners, particularly for information that's going out to all of their staff. So yeah, it is a problem at the moment, and it's something that I ask anyone with a new platform about. I message them on Twitter, I message them on LinkedIn, asking them about that. But yeah, it's not something that people are particularly considering at the moment. So I think not only are we having to be innovative, but I think people like Joanna are also having to be innovative with extra screens to look at captions on. And, you know, the problem with pinning interpreters is a huge problem. We should be able to split the screen where you can see the slides on one and the pinned person on the other, enough to be able to see a BSL interpreter and be able to read them. So yeah, the companies are not responding, no, I would say. That would be my opinion. I don't know if Joanna agrees or not.
Well, Orla, just to ask another question, just related to automated captioning, do you find that there's a discrepancy between what's available in terms of the automated captioning that's out there? Is one better than the other, or is it all just not very good?
I mean, I don't think it's all not very good. I think there is times when it's good, and then there's times when it's not good. And the problem is consistency. You couldn't go into a conference with automatic captioning and have one speaker where it's perfect and another speaker, and then the rest of the speakers not. That's not communication support for somebody. The other problem with automatic captioning is it doesn't have any speaker identification. So you can start with some automatic captions coming out, another person will start talking, and it's as if they're in the same sentence. And I think that's a huge issue. There's very little punctuation, so sentences are just going on and on and on and on. I take my headphones off and I watch them, and I find myself getting lost very, very quickly. There's other people who love them, and people with residual hearing, people with some hearing who can use a number of things around them. Some people don't like having a human or a BSL interpreter involved. They want to just access content without all of that, and they make great use of automatic captioning. But I think the quality varies. I think Teams can be great, and then other times not so great. I think Google is quite good at times, but again, they have 4 or 5 different applications. So Google Slides is not considered as accurate as Live Transcribe. But again, consistency for me is the huge issue. It's not consistent across speakers, accents, sound. It just seems to vary too much for me to relax when I'm looking at it. But we do test it all the time, and we test it against human captioners just to see where it is. And at the moment, I'm not concerned in terms of whether it's going to take work from me. I would say I'm not concerned at the moment.
Sorry, just to add, one thing I have really welcomed, though, has been the focus on automatic captioning. I think that's been brilliant. The spotlight is now on it, and I have really appreciated it. It's been very good for family gatherings, for example. I mean, again, I use Zoom for that. Then I have an app on my phone which I put next to the screen in order to do it. It's a bit rubbish. It is a bit rubbish. And I think the difference is I'm willing to tolerate the rubbishness, so to speak, because it's better than nothing in an informal situation. I wouldn't actually want to be relying on that for a work meeting when it's more important that I know everything that's going on. So I think that we need to be careful about that. And I totally agree about the variability, that I've been in a meeting and I'm thinking, oh, it's working well today, this is exciting. Oh. So it is good, but I would caution against assuming that everybody is benefiting from it at all times.
Yeah, I would agree. I recommend it to some of the young people I work with the National Deaf Children's Society. I will tell them which apps I think would be really useful for their more things. And it's great. It's fantastic for them to be able to stick their phone into a conversation and access their phone. It's absolutely fantastic for that. But I think, you know, we have a client who uses it and enjoys it, but if it comes to an interview for his work or an important meeting for work, he would much prefer human captioners because he knows that he's going to get everything that was said and it's going to be accurate. So yeah, it's for different situations, but I think it's sold as a solution, and it's part of the solution is what I would say.
Great, thanks for that. We've actually just had another follow-up comment on automated captioning. So somebody's just saying here that it can vary greatly. It really depends on the speaker's accent, the speed of the speech, the background noise. Many people are choosing to go for AI because of the cost for human help, but obviously you get what you pay for. So do the panelists think that AI will ever get to the point where it could work as well as a human?
Yes, it will happen one day, but it's not here yet. That's the point. It's definitely going to happen, and that's really exciting, and I'm very pleased about it. And also, when we're allowed to go on holiday again, I'm expecting it to automatically translate into loads of different languages for me. So that's really good news, but it is not in 2020, okay?
No, and I think you know, we work for some larger, bigger corporations, and the quality that they require is incredibly high. So we give them 99.9% accuracy, and they will come back to us with maybe in an hour 5 mistakes that they've picked up. So I think the quality, for it to be used at a very high level, will need to be incredibly high. And, you know, I see us as a company working in that level eventually. That will be, and then automatic captioning possibly for the workplace, but not everything in the workplace. I think it will be something that, again, will be a mixed use, but automatic captioning taking more and more of the lower, not the lower end, but different situations within work. But I think it's important that people still have the choice, because it is, you know, everybody uses it in different ways, and some people really it doesn't work for at all because of many different reasons. And I think it's important that they have the choice to use both humans and automatic captioning.
Sorry,
just
to add in relation to the AI, I think one of the big differences between having a human is that you get punctuation and so on. It's just easier to absorb. You don't have any editing with AI at all, so you get all the ums and ahs and so on. So it's just a little bit harder to digest, and you don't. Yes. So
yeah.
Great. Okay, thanks for that. More questions coming through.
Just 1 second. I love the sentence that's, you know, a piece of punctuation changes the whole sentence. I want to eat mom, or I want to eat mom. So I'm either going to eat my mother or I want to eat mom. So I think that one comma changes the whole sentence. And I think that's where humans definitely have the edge. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just some really interesting questions coming through, particularly regarding the current COVID situation. And somebody's asking about face coverings. So if face coverings become the norm, how do you think we should manage this? And the person that's asking is particularly interested from a educational point of view. So if we have students interacting with their hearing impaired lecturers or vice versa, how do you think that could be managed? Any advice on this?
Okay, face masks are an issue. There's no doubt about it. In America, you can get masks which have a sort of transparent window, but they're not being manufactured in the UK at the moment. The a consortium of deaf charities have written to try and make that change going forward, and some people are wearing biases rather, which is see through. I think it's difficult to generalise because I think it depends on the situation. The reality is health and safety is number one, and everybody knows this. What you do need to do is communicate in advance what you're going to be doing so people can think about strategies. So, for example, if you're definitely going to be covering up when you're giving lectures in class, people may need to arrange communication support that they didn't need to have before, because before they could manage by lip reading the tutor. So I would just recommend explaining exactly what you're going to do, because we know the health risk moving mask on and off, that there's a risk of transfer. So what we can't really say necessarily is be 2 meters away, remove the mask and talk, then put it back. So there is a problem. But again, it depends on the situation, I think, and I would be loath to generalise. What I would urge is communicating in advance exactly what you're going to be doing and encouraging people to come to the solution. For example, if you're going to still be doing online lectures, I'm assuming the lecturers won't wear masks for online lectures, so people might be better off staying at home, because they will be able to access the lectures at home. Whereas if they come in on campus, people are going to be covered up. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's an interesting one. So I think I mean I've worked in an educational institution. I've come from a sixth form college, and for hearing impaired and deaf students trying to engage with online learning, it has its own challenges as well, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think maybe I'm not sure, Lucy, if this might be our last question, or we've got a few more. But this is another really interesting one around the current situation. So somebody's asking, with the plans for social distancing in office workplaces that are advising staff to turn their backs on each other, sit further away, not face to face, how do we think employers are going to be able to enforce social distancing rules within offices, but without excluding deaf people?
Again, I think it's going to depend on the layout of the office. It's saying the obvious, but if you can have the deaf person facing people with plexiglass or something, that would be helpful. I also think you've got things like mirrors. So mirrors can show you where people are. So I've had that in the past when I was having to face a wall. I had a mirror so I could see people coming up behind me. So I think there are solutions. What I would encourage is that the organisation contacts the deaf or hard of hearing employees, explains that they need to think about it, maybe encourage them to come back to the workplace before everybody comes back, and try and work out if there is a particular desk that would be better than some of the others, so they can see what's going on. I mean, one thing that a lot of deaf people I think don't like is not knowing what's going on behind them. It's a bit unnerving, and particularly now with social distancing, you don't want to accidentally do that. It's really helpful to be able to see what's going on, that if people can be in the corner of the office, being able to see, because also they're not going to be able to hear people saying, excuse me, please move, or whatever it is. So they need to be located somewhere where they can see what's going on and people can indicate to them, move, or whatever is required. So, but I think it's about dialogue, and it will be about your particular workplace, and great to think of a potential solution, but double check it, whether that's a hard of hearing person.
That's great. Thank you. And thank you everyone for giving us those questions, and thank you for Davina for helping us today. Davina's only worked for BDF for 4 weeks, so she's been very brave stepping in and doing this webinar with us today. So thank you for that. I just want to do one quick question. I know we're coming to the end of the session, so if we can keep the answers a little brief, ladies, that would be great. So there's positives that are going to come out of this scenario, and I think we've all identified that through sort of daily working life. But what sort of, if you could pick one thing that we take back in as things start to maybe not become as they were before, but as we adopt more generalised working practices, what would you like that to be? Orla, can I come to you first on that one, put you on the spot?
Yeah, I think this idea that people can't work from home or business can't continue because people need to be in the office. I like the fact that that's been proven wrong in many cases, not every business, but I think I've met lots of people who are having a much better quality of life because they're working from home and it's really working for them. But I also think that awareness, people are having to think more about their employees. They're having to, just what Joanna was saying about the awareness of space in the office. They now have to include everybody in that thinking, and they're having to think about all their employees. So I think people are thinking more about other people and how they're interacting with them and how to do it. So I think that's a really great takeaway from this time is, more working from home and more thinking about other people and their needs and how we interact with them in a new way. So that would be me.
That was probably more than one, but I'll let you have that, Orla. Joanna, what's your view on the takeaway?
I think it's good that people are really thinking about how meetings can be effective. It's given us all a bit of a wake-up call. I am excited about the possibilities of AI, but also I would say as a deaf person, we've adjusted very well to lockdown really. We have Zoom meetings, we have quiz nights, I've been doing yoga and BSL, etc. And doing a remote relay. We're sort of running from John O'Groats to Land's End in deaf relay teams. So I think, an online virtual social life, it's been quite good as a member of the deaf community. So I'm telling you, don't bother being hearing, be deaf, it's excellent. But the reason for that is because we're all communicating the same way and employers don't know how to communicate properly. There we go.
Thank you for rounding us up with that one, Joanna. That's fabulous. Okay, let me just click the slides on. I love it when I work in tech and things don't quite work. Okay, so just where to go for more information. Obviously, this is part of our COVID-19 series, all available on the toolkit on the Disability Forum website. But for our members and partners of BDF, you can contact our advice service. The phone number is 020 7403 3020, and you can email us advice@businessdisabilityforum.org.uk, and we're there Monday to Friday, still working there to look after you. We also offer learning and development, resources and consultancy, and networks and task forces. If you enjoyed today's session, please head to our website and find out a bit more of previous webinars we've done that are available on our toolkit. This webinar will be available on there as from Monday. Obviously, a massive thanks to our guests today, to Orla Pearson and Joanna Wootten for joining us. Really lovely to have your insights. Next week, we're doing something a little bit different. We've got a podcast with our CEO, Diane Lightfoot, along with Neil Milliken from Atos, who are talking about GAD, or Global Accessibility Awareness Day. So please look to download that. And we're taking a little break with things going on, and we're going to be back on the 4th of June. So that just leaves me again to thank our guests. Thank you for those of you who joined us today and for joining in with the questions, and obviously Davina for providing backup and questions earlier on. And we'll see you in a few weeks, hopefully. Thank you very much. Take care. Goodbye.
Bye.